Real stories of werewolves, of dogman from history, from your emails, illustrated and animated with the democratizing magic of machine learning AI. Welcome to Scary Stories.
Werewolf Crime. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I used to live in a town that had a problem with a dogman pack one hot August back when I was still a young monster kid. Now I'm an elderly monster kid. Ancient, really. My wife tells her friends that if they want to know who built the pyramids, they should just ask her aged husband. I prefer the word venerable. We used to respect our old coots until it was my turn to become one. I use the term monster kid, and I was in fact one of the many in that generation who read famous monsters of filmland. I knew the names of every kaiju and every Toho or Daiei picture from the 60s. And in addition to my love of movie monsters, I was lucky enough also to be one of the very few who actually got to have a personal experience with a real-life monster back in that era. Like I was just saying, our town was having a problem with some dogmen that late summer. I know these days some towns that get invaded by dogmen find it fascinating. They might call in small-town monsters to investigate and use it to drum up tourism. But back then, we only saw the downside of it, and it wasn't cute to us. People weren't all goggle-eyed in wonder about this fascinating new species. This was a sudden nuisance, and they scared even the big men, so I was afraid of them long before the experience I'm going to relate to you. I didn't need to see one of them to be terrified of all of them. I had heard the stories that were going around. All us kids were scared of the dogman, although we called it the werewolf. Sometimes the entire pack was referred to as werewolves, but the alpha wolf that stood up and walked around on his hind legs, that guy was either the alpha werewolf or just the werewolf. I think they were a pack of dogmen. That is my 2024 opinion looking back on it. These dogmen weren't just big and bad and reckless and violent and hungry. They were organized. And the organization all seemed to stem from this one of them that was clearly the alpha. He's the reason I don't just think of them as a pack of large wolves. This guy stood up on his hind legs from time to time. He could do it like a giant meerkat, just to look around a bit. Or he could stay up on his hind legs and walk around like a big giant Rory Calhoun. He seemed comfortable up on his hind legs, but I never saw any of the other wolves do what he did. He'd go up there, figure things out, then come back down and share his wisdom with the others. And they did communicate with each other. That was a weird part of the story from the very first night, when the pack stole a young cow while the rancher was looking on. It happened on a Saturday night, and I remember because we used to give the rancher's wife a lift to church on Sunday mornings. This one Sunday in early August, the rancher and his wife were both very stressed out, and came out to our car to tell us the story of what had happened to them the night before. With the rancher talking to my father on the driver's side and his wife leaning on my mom's roll-down window on the passenger side, we got to hear a stereo retelling of a series of events that both of them were still a bit manic and freaked out about. The way I remember it was this. The wife woke her husband up after dark, telling him that the cows were making strange sounds she'd never heard them make before. Grabbing his weapon and throwing some boots on, the rancher ran downstairs and out back just in time to see something that he assumed was a skinny bear at first in the darkness. It was standing on its hind legs, and it was inside the cattle enclosure somehow, which had a fairly high fence around it. When the rancher took a shot at this bear, though, it dropped down to all fours, and then he could see eyes shine beyond the fence. Whatever that creature was, there were more of them just outside. He said it felt like they were all part of one mind. One organism split up into separate, predatory, dangerous wolves, each larger than any he had ever seen. The rancher took aim again, since he had a clear shot at the beast's head. But as he fired, he said it was like the animal knew. He anticipated when the rancher would pull the trigger. And so he was able to begin running at the same moment and cause the shot to miss. Not even by a little, but by a lot. But the mysterious glowing-eyed animal did not run away. He ran parallel to the rancher, who lined the beast up in his scope and got a much closer and clearer view than he had before. What he saw through that scope was about to become the most talked about story of the year for our town. What he saw was this. The predator, now running on all fours, ran up to a calf and then grabbed it with one front limb. It tucked the kicking and squealing young cow under one arm, stood up like a man, and ran away on his two hind legs. Imagine the tallest man of all time wearing a wolf skin and head, running with a young heifer tucked under his arm like he was carrying a bag of groceries. I guess in a sense he was. This was the week's grocery shopping for the fam. Now he just had to get it over that tall fence and to his brother wolves on the other side. When the alpha dogman reached the edge of the fence, the bipedal creature hurled his bovine prey over the fence, then scaled it himself in 2 seconds flat. Can you imagine the strength in its upper torso to hurl a heifer like that? Not just for distance, but for height. Because I can't. I've never been able to visualize how it could have done that. I mean, did it spin like a shot putter to get the momentum? Did it really use one arm to toss such a heavy and still living weight that high and that far? When I hear stories from these ladies that write to your channel that become friends with these monsters, do they realize the sheer power inside of one of these creatures? Humans are lucky to have brains because we cannot physically compete with natural predators. We just can't. We are helpless next to them, like newborn babies. That cow hurling incident, which must have been traumatic to witness, not to mention expensive, was why the rancher got an electrified fence put in around those cows. He couldn't afford to lose any more of them, because cows are not cheap. Oh no, wait, I'm getting the order of events confused. First he hired a guy to work security overnight. That was because of this incident with the Dogman pack. He got the electric fence later after the security guy quit suddenly in fear and wouldn't explain why. That was the order of events. So back to that fateful Sunday morning. My father made the rancher repeat the part about the thing running upright while carrying a cow, and then the part about him hurling the calf over the tall wired fence. Dad wanted to go back and look at that fence again and see where this had happened, just to wrap his mind around it. I wanted to go look too, but my mother made us cut the monster party short and go to church. It was the Lord's Day after all. Well, the rancher and his wife going missing at church caused everyone to start talking, and when my father explained to them that it was because of a pack of Wisconsin werewolves, well, this was news that changed everybody. The adults, at least. It was something that turned them all away from their keep up with the Joneses competition with each other. At least for the rest of that month. The entire town became united, like one family. Well, you know, one family at Christmas at least, when they're getting along. On a good year. Okay, forget the family analogy completely. We weren't a family, we actually got along, so we were a team. That's a better word. For that month, we each had each other's backs. We wanted to repel the attackers and defend our homes and families and livestock and pets. So that was the summer I first heard the term alpha, used to describe the wolf that ran like a man. Mostly people just called him the leader, but some of the men said alpha. He was the smart one. He was big. Although a few of the other creatures looked around as large as he was, according to several reports people were spreading around. The pack liked chickens. They liked eggs. They liked goats. Everybody was talking to everybody else about what security upgrades they were considering. Everyone was reacting in one way or another to it. The parents were spending money and improving fences and barriers. We kids were spreading every rumor we could, adding scary parts to what we heard, and generally working ourselves into a permanent state of Halloween in August. For us boys, it was something spooky, and we liked spooky stuff. At least we thought we did. We liked spookiness when it was on TV. We figured seeing the alpha werewolf and his crime gang in person would be even more exciting than a scary TV movie of the week. This seemed logical to our young minds, which did not fully understand what danger was yet. So we boys from a few local families made plans to sneak out of our homes, meet at a big rock in the woods we all knew, then go exploring in the dark for the wolfman or the dogman or whatever you want to call the leader of this pack of criminal troublemakers. I found that getting up out of bed in the middle of the night was harder than I had expected. I just wanted to go back to dreaming. I didn't want to put on sneakers and risk getting in trouble to go outside in the dark. If it hadn't been August, I think I would have gone back to bed. But that was a very hot summer, and I wasn't having an easy time of sleeping anyway. So I did what I had agreed to do, and I went out and met up with the other scared boys, all having second thoughts about what a great idea this was. It had seemed brilliant when the sun was out, but here in the dark at the edge of the woods, with the crickets and bugs making so much noise all around us, this felt like we were choosing to have a nightmare. I kept shivering, and so did the others, in spite of the fact that it must have been over 80 degrees that night. It had been up around 100 during the days that week, so I'm not exaggerating. It was a hot night for shivering and chills, but we were getting both. Once we had gathered and every boy was there with no absentees, we then started discussing what to do. We really didn't know how to search a forest for a monster in the dark. It just seemed like a good idea that we never fleshed out. One guy wanted to walk in one dark direction, and the others wanted to walk in equally creepy-looking directions instead. I wanted to walk back home, but I was too chicken to admit that I was chicken. Before we could begin this choose-your-own-adventure, we heard a really deep-voiced howling far off in the distance, and the crickets lowered their chatter. I started power-walking toward my home, but I was grabbed and dragged along with the tide of the other boys, who all instinctively started running toward the source of that scary deep howling. I kept suggesting that this might be a mistake, and I was called all sorts of politically incorrect names in return for my sage advice. Nobody appreciated what I had to say, but I was the only one of us making any sense. We were suddenly surrounded by large, silent wolves. They had seemed to come from every direction at once, and they were behaving far more calmly than any of us boys. They just sort of watched us, looking into the circle of boys with slightly worried expressions on their dog-like faces. They were as tall as we were or taller, and they were all still down on all fours. We shut up and stared back at them, all staring at us. They could easily take the lot of us down, and maybe that was what they were gonna do. It was a standoff, but we had brought no weapons, while these creatures had brought their teeth and claws and muscle that far exceeded that of even grown men, let alone youngsters like us. I was in the center of the circle, so I didn't realize it at first, but suddenly we were being herded. The group of us boys were being nudged along in a certain direction deeper into the woods. Nobody wanted to fight the wolves for obvious reasons, and we allowed ourselves to get herded like the sheep we were. Nobody had any idea where we were going, and I was scared we'd never find our way back, even if we managed to escape these giant dogs. We walked in the dark until every one of us had tripped on something or banged up an ankle or sustained some other minor scrape or bruise. We were all getting tired, too, when we realized we were being funneled into a cave. This was when we stopped being silent and began to protest verbally and push back a bit against our captors. They, in turn, bared their fangs at us and kept us moving in the direction they wanted us going in. We were led into a chamber in the cave with ambient lighting in it from a wide opening on top that was letting moonlight in. As we entered the chamber, loudly complaining and struggling to be set free, I saw one of the wolves rise up to attention like a man. He raised an arm in our direction and began making a terrible sound that clearly meant he was displeased. It was a kind of a whining and growling mixed together, like a dog that is extremely agitated. It was the alpha dogman, and he seemed to be very upset about us being led into his chamber. I thought we were finished, but the dogman seemed angry at his people more than at us. He objected to our presence, yes, but he was angrier at those who brought us there than he was at us. Chaos erupted in the chamber, and we boys ran back the way we came from, as the huge wolves fought amongst themselves in what appeared to be some kind of attempted revolution or civil war or something. We ran out the back and stuck together in the woods, looking for landmarks we recognized. Once I saw the meeting rock, I bellowed that there's the rock. We all screamed in a sense of relief and charged off toward our respective homes, shouting incoherently, like Mel Gibson in the movie Braveheart. I was convinced the dogmen were right behind me, all the way home. Even as I scaled the tree outside my window and climbed back into my room, I could have sworn I heard them getting closer in the woods. I locked my window and my door and pulled the covers up over my head. That made the room stifling hot, but it didn't stop my shivering and chills. So we boys all met back at the rock in the sunlight, trying to make sense out of what had just happened the night before. Why had they led us to the Alpha? I don't think they were trying to upset him. I think they might have seen us as food, possibly. But why had the Alpha flipped out and gotten angry once we were inside their cave? Well, maybe he didn't see us as food. Maybe he understood we were young humans. Maybe that made us young hunters from a different hunting tribe in his view. Maybe he was concerned with angering the elders of our tribe and starting a war. We had other theories too, but we didn't know. We didn't really understand any part of the adventure we just had. We agreed not to be near those woods after dark any longer or ever again, though. So nobody noticed until we were all back in school in September, but there were no more werewolf or dogman sightings or crimes committed after that night. No more animals being stolen off of farms, no more breaking and entering, no more nothing. It was as if the dogman crime gang had just evaporated overnight. I think it was because of us boys, I really do. Not that we did anything brave or anything smart or wise. It wasn't so much what we did as what the Alpha Dogman felt about it. I mean, he seemed convinced that showing the humans their hiding spot meant that more humans would soon show up. He seemed as scared of us being there as we were to be there. Taking all that into account, it seems to me that the dogman probably just packed up and went off looking for a different hiding spot and a different place to hunt in. There were too many of us humans in this area, and we seemed to even hunt at night, too. Why compete over resources with us humans when there's a whole big wide world of woods here in the Midwest that you could hunt in instead? Personally, I think that was what was going through the big giant feral head of that Alpha Dogman. And that is what I think ended our local wave of werewolf crime.
Comfort t-shirt for 2024. Scary Skull logo is back for more. You won't find the sucker in any store except for our online store with scary merch galore. No matter how big or small you are, we've got a Scary Story skull t-shirt in your size. Modeled here by actual werewolves, but made to fit humans as well. A link is in the description. T-shirt for 2024. Scary Skull logo is back for more. You won't find the sucker in any store except for our online store with scary merch galore.
Hope you enjoyed that new entry in our month of Alpha Dogman stories in August here on Scary Stories NYC. Coming up this week, I am currently animating images of baby dogmen and baby carriages, because that's one of the episodes we've got coming up soon. But right now, it's time to thank our executive producer for this episode, Long Island Bigfoot. Our executive producer is Long Island Bigfoot, and nothing rhymes with Long Island Bigfoot. Please join me in thanking Long Island Bigfoot for being a channel member and making this episode possible. If you haven't already, you should check out his channel and also check out his episodes on Vic Cundiff's Dogman Encounters show. I have wanted to do an episode illustrating and animating his encounters, but I have no email or other contact info on the guy, and it's been impossible to coordinate or to send him any of the animations for his approval or for him to tell me where I'm getting it wrong. There was also an old acquaintance of John Keel who wanted to interview LIB, but I couldn't put the two in contact, so it's weird. But he seems like a nice guy, if a bit mysterious, and if you guys aren't already subscribed to his channel, I don't know what you're waiting for. LIB gets to see our secret uncensored Dogman stories, of which we do 4 new ones a month. And to tell you more about that, here's our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Hank? Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that when it cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.